Known as the Acid Queen, Grace Slick wasn't just a rock star, but a wild woman who left chaos and scandal in her wake. From a steamy one-night stand with Jim Morrison, to having secret affairs with almost every band member that she worked with, to almost spiking the president's tea with LSD, Grace could easily turn an ordinary day into an unpredictable roller coaster. What was the truth behind the wild persona? Stick around as we reveal the untold story of Grace Slick's intimate life. From the 1960s to the late 1980s, Grace Slick was not just the wildest woman in the American entertainment industry, but even the craziest men could not match her madness. In an interview with Tim Johns for The Guardian, Grace, in her usual giddy mood, said, "Rock stars are like spoiled kids. All we care about is fun, spending too much money, and who we can hook up with." The rock and roll icon definitely lived that life to the fullest and performed some of the most outrageous stunts of her time, like her 1960s song White Rabbit, where she sang about the ecstasies she got from drugs for 2.5 minutes, and somehow it slipped past the TV censors and brought psychedelic ideas into millions of living rooms. She was also the first person ever to swear on live American TV. During a performance, she randomly shouted, "Up against the wall, mother," without flinching. One might think that Grace's rebellious drive stemmed from an unusual childhood, but it would surprise many to know that she grew up in a very normal family. Her dad was a banker who made enough that her mother could stay at home. Grace attended school in Illinois and later enrolled in a top-notch girls' college in New York. Grace's life was already planned for her, but it never felt right to her. "The whole thing just seemed boring," she said in the interview. "A lot of us thought, nope, that's not the life for me." In 1961, Grace married Jerry Slick, a cinematographer and drummer whom she met in college. The couple shared a love for music and the arts and settled in San Francisco, where she began modeling. However, she needed something more exciting. Then, 4 years later, she came across an article in the San Francisco Chronicle that sparked a new fire in her. The article was about a band in San Francisco with a strange name, Jefferson Airplane. The band was making waves, and she wanted to be part of the rave, so after selling it to her husband, they formed their band, called the Great Society. It instantly became popular too, and with the thrill of fame, Grace began living the carefree life she had always dreamed of. Like many San Francisco bands of the mid-60s scene, Grace and the band started experimenting with LSD, and she had no limits to how naughty she could get with her husband while on stage. They basically had no respect for the word appropriate. However, as the band grew larger, Grace began to receive more attention, which had a negative impact on her marriage. The fights between her and Jerry became more frequent and toxic, to the extent that the moment she got an offer from Jefferson's Airplane, she didn't think twice about ditching her husband and the band. Immediately, upon joining the band, she became an instant rock star. She could do whatever she wanted, and with whoever she wanted, despite being married. According to Grace, her most memorable escapade was with the Doors' Jim Morrison in the late 1960s. After seeing him howl like a wolf while on all fours and how chaotic he could be, especially when drunk or high, she instantly got the unquenchable desire for him, and later, when both bands were on a tour, she finally got to fulfill her fantasy. After partying, she boldly went to Jim's room, and what followed was an intense encounter. In Grace's words, it was like making love to a floating art form with eyes. He was a well-built boy. His member was slightly larger than average. Despite how memorable that night was to her, it remained a one-night stand. According to Grace, she was somewhat disappointed that he never called back and understood that she wasn't his style. As strange as it sounds, Grace was also in a relationship with her bandmate, Paul Kantner, during this period, and in 1971, she and Jerry finally got divorced. One could only have imagined how heartbroken Jerry must have been seeing his college love get engulfed in the fast-paced lifestyle. But Grace couldn't have cared less because of how much she loved being wild. In fact, she was once kicked out for being too mischievous. In the Guardian interview, she said, "I don't know if naughty is the word. Illegal is probably a better term." In 1970, Grace received an invitation to the White House from President Richard Nixon. Most celebrities would have been nervous and tried to act their best when meeting the president, but not Grace. She wasn't there to smile and shake hands. She had a mission: spike the president's tea with LSD, not because she was an international spy, but just for the fun of it. On the day of the event, Grace had 600 micrograms of LSD hidden in her pocket. She really thought she could just walk into the White House, drug the president, and then sit back and laugh as he tripped into another dimension. However, there was a significant problem that Grace was too busy to consider. The security would actually do their job. She didn't think about metal detectors, ID checks, or the fact that the White House isn't exactly easy to sneak into. She got flagged as a security risk and was banned from the event before she even stepped inside. The following year, after consuming more alcohol than 3 guys in a bar could take, she challenged her bandmate and secret lover, Jorma Kaukonen, to a car race down a slippery road famous for the number of crashes it had had on it. And she added to the casualty toll after crashing into a wall at 80 miles per hour. Basically, Grace was having secret affairs with Jorma, Spencer Dryden, and Jack Cassidy while in a relationship with Paul. When asked about her situationships, she jokingly commented, "I was pretty close with everyone in the band. A guy I used to live with called women he slept with friendly. I like that word. So yeah, I was friendly with all of them, except for Marty, but if he had asked, I probably would have said yes to him too." Still in 1971, Grace and Paul welcomed their daughter, China. Rather than settling into traditional family life, Grace took China on the road, raising her in tour buses, hotel rooms, and recording studios. In 1975, Grace and Paul finally decided to go their separate ways. But just a year later, she had completely moved on and married Skip Johnson, the band's lighting designer. He was a deviation from her previous relationships, and his quieter, more grounded nature brought the stability she had when she was younger. As time went on, Grace began to realize just how much damage she was doing to herself as alcohol and drugs started taking over her life. What used to be wild fun soon turned messy, and it started affecting not just her, but everyone around her. Her biggest spiral moment was in 1978, during the band's European tour. Her drinking habit had totally gone out of control, and on the first night in Germany, she was so drunk that she couldn't even get on stage, which angered the crowd who had paid good money to watch her, and a full riot broke out. The next night, she tried to perform, but could barely get her lines right. When the crowd booed her, she began insulting them about World War II, fighting with people in the crowd, and even some of her bandmates. It was chaos. The day after, the band kicked her out, and things just kept getting worse from there. Hoping to reconnect with her past, Grace returned to San Francisco, but during a local game show, she was pulled out for yelling at the contestants. Grace finally came to terms with the fact that she needed help, but could not have imagined that it would be a friend she had worked with over a decade ago, David Crosby, who would be the one to help save her from the storm she was stuck in. Eventually, she checked into a rehab center in Napa Valley, hoping for a fresh start. But then, in the late 1990s, her battle with alcohol caught up with her again. This time, it was not just her who was addicted, but she had also influenced her daughter, China. Noticing how bad she and her mother were slipping, China rang up David Crosby. He didn't hesitate to come to their aid. Within hours, he showed up in a limousine and took both mother and daughter straight to Exodus, a treatment center in California. And it worked. As Grace later said in a 2019 interview with Goldmine, "I haven't touched drugs since. This second rehab stay wasn't just the beginning of her sober life, it was the end of her music career too." Grace decided to step away from the stage, pick up a paintbrush, and start creating art. Throughout it all, Skip, her longtime partner, remained by her side even during her darkest days. They eventually parted ways around 1994, after she had fully recovered from her addictions. What is the craziest Grace Slick story that you've ever heard? Let us know in the comments section below. Also, remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more updates. While you're still here, click the video on your screen for more celebrity videos.